think so.
Okay, hi.
Oh, all right, cool.
Thank you all for coming today. In our session, we are going to be talking about how we conquered marketing analytics at New Relic using Tableau. I'm sure most of you have a lot of really data-hungry marketers, but in order to achieve greatness in the rugged land of marketing, you need more than just data. So today, we are going to give you a framework for how you can transform your marketing analytics. My name is Maria Stopak, and I am the Senior Manager of Marketing Analytics at New Relic. My team is responsible for influencing the overall marketing strategy through data and analytics. Here is a picture of the team. We wear our data nerd shirts proudly. We feel like we are the true data nerds of New Relic. I love math. I have my undergraduate degree and my graduate degree in mathematics. I am New Relic's resident mathemagician. And in my free time, I am a drummer. I play in a band. We play mostly covers, but occasionally we just jam. And you can also find me volunteering in high schools, particularly with female students, to try to encourage them to go into science and technology. And with me today, I have data viz extraordinaire Josh Dubinsky.
I'm Josh. I went to the University of Illinois, aka the Harvard of Central Illinois, as I like to call it. I studied marketing and information systems while I was there. My hobbies are not quite as interesting as Maria's. I really like playing guitar. I'm not quite good enough to be in Maria's band. I'm still working on it. I also play fantasy football. I'm in last place in both my leagues. Again, I don't really want to talk about that either. And I love biking, but I couldn't find a picture of myself biking, so that was the best I could do. I've been using Tableau for about 2 years now. This is a picture of me meeting Bill Nye last year in Austin. Probably the coolest experience of my life. He told me that he loves me, so I don't think anything will ever top that.
A little bit about New Relic. New Relic is a tech company. It's a B2B SaaS company, and it's primarily a tool for software developers. So we monitor your website and your servers, and we will alert your software developers when something is slow or possibly just broken. And so then your software developers can go in and identify the issue and fix it, providing a better user experience for your customers. New Relic is headquartered in San Francisco, which is where Josh and I work, but we also have offices in Portland, Barcelona, and Dublin. New Relic is a rapidly growing company. We serve SMB and enterprise companies globally. We're growing so quickly, I'm waiting for the day that someone comes to me and tells me that we're expanding to Middle Earth. I wouldn't be surprised. But with this rapid expansion comes a lot of questions. What's working? What's not working? What's driving revenue? And so people want data to answer those questions. And so everyone in the company is coming to us and asking us questions. And literally, this is what my life feels like on a regular basis. I feel like we're one small team, and we have all of these execs coming to us, and we are just knocking questions out left and right. But no matter how many we answer, I feel like we're not making an impact. Does this feel like you? Are you getting swamped? Yeah, I see some heads nodding. It's like you have so many questions and you just can't keep up. So how do you scale yourself? How do you like start to make an impact at your company? Well, for us, the hero for us that helped us scale was Tableau. And so Tableau is our hero. And when we started to use Tableau, we came up with a little 3-step framework for when we were building out Tableau dashboards that really helped us scale. So the problem is you have people asking you similar questions, but it's never asked the same way twice. So you have to take those questions that are being asked of you and you say, hey, I realize this is what you're asking, but what you need is actually this, and I can give you that data, and I have that, and here's a dashboard. And so that's how you can start to scale yourself, is when these questions come in, you start pointing them to the dashboards that you've already built. So our little framework that we made was, first, start with the question that you were trying to answer. When you can figure out the question that you're trying to answer, I think the rest is a lot easier. And that's actually, it sounds easy, but it's actually hard to actually nail down the question that you're trying to ask. The second thing is think outside the box. There is a time and place for line charts and bar charts, but sometimes you can visualize that data in a slightly better way to tell a better story. And so that brings me to my third point, which is tell a story. Don't make your business users have to work hard to figure out what the data is telling you. Use colors, use annotations, do what you need to do so that way someone comes in, they read the question, they literally title your chart with the question you're trying to ask or answer. So they can come in, read the question, they look at the visualization, and the story just jumps right off the pages to them. So we are going to use this framework for 3 specific marketing analytics questions. So the first one we're going to tackle is segmenting your lead database. Then we are going to talk about measuring your product marketing performance, specifically around how you are doing against your competitors. And lastly, we will talk about the customer funnel. So this image is actually from the third Lord of the Rings movie. One of the main characters, Aragorn, is giving this epic speech to get his men pumped up and ready to charge into battle. So today, Josh and I are going to get all of you battle ready to conquer these 3 marketing analytics beasts, as we're calling them. So our first beast is the orcs from Lord of the Rings, and this is representing how to segment your lead database. You have a lead database. There's a bunch of email addresses in it, but who are these people? You have this really fuzzy image. You don't know who they are. But once you start to identify who is in your database and why they are buying your product, you can start to create marketing personas. And your marketing team has probably already done this. So if you can go through your database and you can tag every single lead as one of your personas, you start to get a much clearer picture of who's in your database. Now, before your marketing team runs out and starts creating all sorts of targeted messaging and content for a specific persona, you need to know how many people you have in each persona. So that was the challenge presented to us. How many people do we have of each persona in our lead database? So what we're going to walk you through is our first approach, what we had done before we had Tableau. And we're going to highlight the shortcomings of that approach and then show you a better way to do it in Tableau. Now, I can't show you real New Relic data, so bear with me in these fake examples that I've put together. So here was our first approach at it. Most popular personas. We have men, hobbits, dwarves, and we have this bar chart that tells us how many we have of each. I think that's pretty good. Tells you exactly what you wanted to know. It was the question that was asked. It's a nice bar chart. It's clear. It's sorted. It's okay. It was a good first approach, and this was something that I had legitimately done a few years ago. The problem with this, let's say our marketing team is trying to target hobbits. Well, from this chart, our marketing team is going to go off and spend tons of time and energy, like I said, making that specific targeted messaging, making content. And from this data, that's the smart move. If you're targeting hobbits, it looks like that's our second highest persona. So awesome. But this is not a great way to do it. So we're going to show you a better way to do it. And this is how we did it once we got Tableau. So following our 3-step framework, first thing is ask a question. So the question we chose to ask was, how have the most popular personas changed from last year to this year? And this is the chart we created in Tableau. This is called a slope graph. So on the left, we have the number of leads we had acquired in 2016. And on the right, it's the number of leads we had acquired in 2017. And so we can see how things have changed over the last year. And we used color to try to highlight the story. And so all of the data is there, but we sort of grayed out the personas that aren't as interesting, and we brought to the foreground in red the ones that are decreasing. So this tells a much different story. We have far fewer hobbits this year than we did last year. So if your marketing team went out and made all this content and expected a high yield from it, they might be like, hey, how come we didn't get as much conversion out of these leads as we thought we were going to? Well, that's because most of them were stale. They're over a year old. We actually should be spending our time and energy acquiring hobbits, not messaging to them and expecting them to become paying customers. So now our tactics are different. Now we're either buying lists or we're doing different demand generation efforts to try to acquire new hobbits because the ones we have are stale. And so this was a much better story, and it really helped our marketing team do the right actions that were necessary. And so now we are going to hop over to Josh, who will show us how to do this in Tableau.
Awesome. Thank you, Maria. Let's hope this works. Okay, it didn't. That's fine. So all of the calculated fields that I'm going to show throughout each of the demos, I've already built them just in case I miss a comma or something. I don't want to spend time QAing my formulas and mess this up. But I will show you how I built all of them. So first things first, we're going to take the created date pill and drop it onto the column shelf. And the default date part is going to be year, which is exactly what we want. We're looking at 2017 compared to 2016. And then I'm going to take the number of records, drop that into rows. So the default chart is a line chart, which is what we want. I'll make it a little bit bigger so you can see it. Okay, good start, super simple so far. I'm gonna take the persona pill and I'm gonna drop that onto label because we wanna split this out by persona. And just like that, you can already see it's already starting to take shape. We're almost done. But this is where it gets slightly tricky. We need to first figure out what is the delta between 2017 and 2016, and then color based on whether or not it was an increase, a decrease, or it stayed constant. So we need to use the lookup function. The lookup function, I'll show you really quickly. As Tableau explains, it's not like the VLOOKUP in Excel. As Tableau explains, it returns the value of a given expression in a target row specified specified as a relative offset from the current row. So that's kind of long-winded. Basically, all it does is it allows you to select a value based on its position relative to other values. So I'm going to look up some number of records last, so the most recent one, and then I'm just going to subtract the same thing. I'm going to use first this time. And so that's going to get us our delta. And if I take the delta, and so let's just check to make sure this worked. You can see -8, so we had 110 minus 118, -8, so it's working. Now, the next step is, okay, great, we found it, but if we color by that delta, that's actually not going to work. All we want to know is whether or not it increased or decreased, right? So all we have to do is use the sign function. And the sign function tells us exactly that, whether or not there was an increase, decrease, or it stayed the same. You could make an if-then statement, which is what I initially tried to do, but then I realized I was actually just simply recreating the sign function, and it was completely unnecessary. And yes, you could wrap a sign function around the original delta function. You could just put sign in front of this, but you're probably going to want to look at what the delta actually is, and so then you can't. So keeping them separate is probably the best move. So if we take the sign of delta and drop it onto the marks card under color, you can see we get, let me make it discrete really quick. We're almost there. Discrete, and then we have our final result.
Thank you, Josh. So that was super simple and kind of easy to do.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you.
And so our first marketing analytics beast, which was the orc, has been defeated. And we did this by, instead of using a bar chart to show the absolute values of how many of each persona we had, we changed it to a slope graph to see the comparisons of how many leads had we acquired last year versus this year. Our second marketing analytics beast is represented by the troll from Harry Potter. And this is going to be talking about how to measure your product marketing performance. Before we talk about measuring product marketing performance, let's just talk about what is product marketing. So your product marketers are writing messaging for all of your products and new features. They think about how to drive demand and usage of your products. And with that, they're thinking about the competitive landscape. How can they help your sales team sell more deals? And so they need to know how to position your company versus your competitors. So when we wanted to measure our product marketing's performance, we decided to look at our deals and how many we're winning or losing against our competitors. So we know we lose some deals and we know we win some deals against our competitors. We had our sales team tag every deal as which competitor they were up against, if they were up against one. And then what we did was we looked at how much ARR, which is annual recurring revenue, so that's just literally the value or the amount of the deal. So we looked at how many times how much ARR are we winning or are we losing against our top competitors. So again, I can't share exact New Relic data, but we're going to walk through a Harry Potter example. So this was the first shot that I took at doing this. And so I did this in Excel. Again, this was before we had Tableau. And it was literally our ARR by competitors. And so I have a bar chart that just lists out how much ARR was lost and how much ARR was won. But there are a few things that I didn't like about this. First of all, there's no sorting here because I wasn't really sure what to sort by. I was kind of like, when I first did this, I just kind of left it as is. And so this is actually sorted by the labels are alphabetical, which is not really helping tell a story. So any business exec that looks at this has to kind of work pretty hard to figure out what's going on. They can see the leaky cauldron is winning the most pretty easily. It also looks like they're losing the most. But after that, it's kind of hard to tell what's going on. Also, we're using red and green for the colors, and that's pretty hard for people who are colorblind to distinguish between the two. Okay, so using our framework, first thing we want to do is ask a question. So once we got Tableau, we wanted to recreate this. The question that we posed was, how much ARR has been lost or won against our top competitors? And so the second step is to think outside the box. How can we visually represent this differently? And so this is what we came up with in Tableau. This is called a diverging stacked bar chart, and what it does is it highlights the differences between your negative and your positive values much more clearly. So then we sorted by how much ARR we had lost. And so now we can clearly see that Leaky Cauldron is who we're losing the most ARR to. But what really stands out here that didn't in the previous image is the third one down, which is Ollivanders. Sure, we're losing the third most ARR to them, but we're winning almost nothing against Ollivanders, and we didn't know this. And so for our product marketing team, when I delivered this chart to them, they said, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that Ollivanders was one of our top competitors. They quickly whipped up some content for our sales team on how to position ourselves against Ollivanders, and now they had what they needed to sell to people when we were up against Ollivanders on a deal. And so it was low-hanging fruit that our marketing team was able to identify in this chart. And one last thing, we did switch the colors from red and green to red and blue because it's a little bit easier to distinguish. So now over to Josh for the demo on how we can build this out in Tableau.
Cool. All right, let's hope this one goes as well as the first one did. Let me switch my data source. Okay, so again, this is pretty simple to build out. There's just one little trick that I'll get to in a second. First things first, I'm going to take competitors, and I'm going to drag that onto the rows shelf, just like that. Next, so first time we were trying to build this out, we took the amount, we dragged that to columns, and then we took the stage name, which is just saying, okay, is this deal won or lost? That's all it is. We drag that onto color, but immediately you see something is wrong with this visualization. And the trick was we're pulling from Salesforce and we're looking at opportunities, and the lost deals, we're not actually losing those deals, it's just opportunity, it's just an amount that we could have potentially won that we didn't win. So all the data is showing is opportunity, amount, $800 lost, so we didn't win that $800. So Tableau, without us actually tweaking the data, like it can't differentiate that, it doesn't know that. So we actually had to manually change we had to split out the amount into won amount and lost amount, and then make the lost amount negative. And so that's pretty important when you're creating a diverging stack bar chart, like the one we just showed. You have to have negative values in addition to the positive ones so that you can line them up and actually differentiate between the two. So pretty simple for the one calculation, just if stage name equals 1, then amount, just like that. So we'll pull in one amount, and then the same thing for the lost amount, only if stage name equals lost, then let's do the amount times -1. Super simple once we got the trick, like we had to think about it for a second, but that actually got us the result we wanted. So if I pull in lost amount right next to one amount up here in the column shelf, now we have a diverging stack bar chart. It's not sorted or anything yet, but we'll get to that in a second. So that was the hardest part. Next, all I'm going to do is take the stage name, drop it onto color, and then click this little icon right here because we ultimately want to sort by who are we losing the most to in a descending fashion. So I'll click it twice, and you can format it, get rid of the axes and things like that, but that's the gist of it. Thank you.
So our second marketing analytics beast, which was the troll from Harry Potter, has been defeated. And we did this by, instead of just using a regular bar chart, we did a diverging stacked bar chart to really highlight the differences between negative and positive values. Our third and final marketing analytics beast for today is represented by Jabba the Hutt from Star Wars. And he is representing the customer funnel. And we chose this particularly because if you turn Jabba the Hutt upside down, he kind of looks like a funnel, so it worked. Okay, so what is the B2B customer funnel? It's how we track the person's buying cycle. So marketing is going out and trying to get leads, and when we find someone that's interested in buying our product, we pass it over to sales, and sales creates an opportunity. And from that opportunity, we would hope that we can either win that deal or we can lose that deal, but we hope it turns into a won deal. So when we talk about the funnel, there are 3 metrics that everyone wants to know. The first is the volume. So how many people do you have at each stage in the funnel? The second is the conversion between the stages, because you want to make sure people are flowing through your funnel appropriately. So you want to know the conversion rates between each step. And the third metric is velocity, which is how quickly someone's moving through your funnel. How many days, like actually time, like how many days is it taking to get through each stage? Because if you can find a stage where it's taking too long, like if you find a bottleneck, you can do things to try to speed that up and make sure that your customers are having a good experience as they're moving through their buying cycle. So when I started at New Relic 3 years ago, this is what I had come up with in PowerPoint. This was awesome. Everyone was like giving me pats on the back. I was a data rock star. We had never seen anything like this, and it was great. It was a good first take at it. But what this is showing is the data for a set period of time. So let's say it's the data from last quarter. And so this is saying, here's the volume at each stage, and here are our conversion rates between those stages. Well, okay, but is that good? Is that bad? I don't know. There's no comparison. How did we do the quarter before? How did we do the year before? So when it's a static image like this, it's a little hard to tell if it's good or not. You just sort of see it and you just say, okay, thanks. You can't really action on it. Plus, this is missing velocity completely. This isn't telling me how long it's taking to move through the funnel at all. Another thing that's wrong with this is each stage is not visually proportionate to the volume, and so it can be misleading. You might think that your funnel's like performing better than it actually is. And finally, I hate the funnel visualization. Think about an actual funnel. If you were to pour water into a funnel, the amount of water you pour into the top is the same amount of water that's coming out the bottom. I don't know about you guys, but I don't have 100% conversion rate through my funnel. If you guys do want to come work for your company, no, I'm just kidding. But yeah, so it's just a bad visualization. Like, blow up the funnel, get rid of it, don't use it anymore. It's just bad. So this is how we ended up changing it and making it better in Tableau. So again, using our 3-step framework, the first thing we did was start with the question, which was, how are customers moving through our funnel? And then we thought outside the box. We don't need one visualization to represent our funnel. We can have multiple pieces. You can have multiple visual, like reports or widgets to tell the story. So these were the 3 that we came up with that were the most important for us. So at the very top, what marketing wants to know is how many of our leads are converting to opportunities, because we want to make sure we're getting good leads that are actually converting. So what's our conversion rate from lead to opportunity? We have 22%. It's nice, big at the top. That's our overall average conversion rate. The middle widget is a line graph, and that's showing our conversion rate over time. So now we're getting a sense for how we're doing over time, and are we getting better or are we getting worse? And so we have it by month. This third chart is super interesting. So this is showing us our velocity. And so on the left, we have our months. And so we start with January at the bottom and we go all the way up to September, which was last month. And what this is saying is, of the leads that converted, so of the leads we got in January that converted to an opportunity, 53% of them converted in 0 months. So in January, that would mean in January. Of the leads that converted from January, 17% converted 1 month later, which would be February. And so then 7% converted in March, and we have this long tail because we still have like leads converting to opportunities today that we had acquired back in January. So we get this long tail. And then we put the grand total at the top, so it's sort of the aggregate for how we're performing. And so we can see here that 61% of the leads that will convert typically convert in the same month that you acquired that lead. Okay, here's an example for how this was super useful for us. I have a marketer who says, I poured my heart and soul into a campaign. It's been 30 days, and I'm only at a 10% conversion rate. You're telling me our average is 22%, and I'm sitting at 10%. My campaign was a failure, and I tried so hard. Well, you say, hey, wait a minute, marketer, look at this. 61% convert in that first month. So if you just give it some time, your campaign might actually make it up to that 22%. So your campaign might be performing on average how all of our other campaigns are doing. And so then this lets your marketer kind of calm down, realize they need to give it time. You need to let the magic happen as it does, and just give it more time to see if you got up to that 22%. And so this started to make our marketers feel a little less crazy. We had less questions coming to us because they were all able to calm down and not be so nervous about the data. And this was a great way for us to just visualize and understand how our customer funnel is performing. So now over to Josh to see how we can create this in Tableau.
All right, cool. I'm 2 for 2 right now, so let's see if I can actually get through the third one. Okay, so let me switch my data source. All right, so there are 3 components, as Maria said. The first 2 components are going to take me maybe 20 seconds to build. They're super, super simple. First things first, it's just the conversion rate, which I won't even bother building it. I'll just show you what it looks like. It's just a distinct count of the number of opportunities we got divided by the distinct count of the number of leads we got. Simple conversion rate. I'll drop that in here. It's a little small, so I'm going to format it. Let's make it 28. And then also change the number to percentage, and then I don't really think we need the decimal places. So just like that, first component's already done. Second step, same process. Take conversion rate, drop it in here. Only this time, we're going to take the lead date, drop it into column. Again, the default, as I'm sure most of you know, the default date part's going to be year, which is not what we want. I'm going to switch it over to month. And then I'm going to move over to a line chart. So just like that, and again, I'd change this to a percentage, but for the purposes of moving along, just like that, our second component is done. Pretty simple. Again, took maybe 20 seconds. Now, the third one is slightly more complicated, getting that velocity table. That took a little more thought. So first things first, we need to calculate how many months did it take the lead to convert into an opportunity. So the way we did that was by using the dateDiff function. So dateDiff. And so pretty straightforward. We're going to take month, because that's the date part that we want. We're going to take the start date, which is the lead date, and then the opportunity date. That's all it is. It's a really straightforward function if you've never used it. It's just subtracting the amount of time based on whatever date part you set between those 2 date fields. So we'll take the months to opportunity field that we just created, drag that into columns. There's immediately something that I don't like, which is there are null values. And so as Maria said, we want to look at the conversion or the velocity of leads that have converted, right? We know that 78% of our leads don't. We don't care about them. We're specifically trying to look at the 22% that did and see how long it took. So I'm going to immediately exclude the null values just to get that out of the way so it doesn't throw us off later. Okay, perfect. So this is looking a lot better. Next step, I'm going to take the lead date and I'm going to drop it into rows. Oh, sorry, that was lead ID. Lead date, drop it into rows. Again, default date part. Move over to month, and you can see it's sort of starting to take shape, but we like to flip it and go in a reverse chronological order if you're reading from top to bottom, because that's how you get that long tail effect. So if I sort here, that's the long tail effect that you're used to. You can visualize it the other way if you'd like, but it doesn't really make very much sense. Next, we're going to take the number of records and drop that onto text. So it's looking pretty good. And then we don't want a simple text table. We actually want a highlight table. And so what's interesting is when you select highlight table, I still don't know why it does this. It flips the axes. All you have to do is click on this icon right here, and we're back. And so it already colored based on what we were looking for, but this is looking at raw volume, and we want to look at percent of total. So first things first, let's just do it for the text. I'll make a quick table calculation for percent of total, and the default for percent of total is going to be running across, which is exactly what we want, so I don't need to mess that up. Let me format this again and get rid of the decimal places because they're unnecessary. And then the last step here is, let's make another one, percent of total. And so we're actually coloring by percent of total additionally. We actually forgot that the first time we were doing this, and it kind of threw us off. And then the last step is the totals. So we'll go to the analytics pane, we'll drag totals to column grand totals, and that's going to default to the bottom. It's going to place it below. If you want to put it on top, which is what we selected to do, all you have to do is go to analysis, totals, and then column totals to top. So once you've created those 3 components, it's super easy. You just drop it in a dashboard and you're done.
Thanks, Josh. So our third and final marketing analytics beast of the day has been defeated. And we did that by blowing up the funnel and using a combination of 3 other widgets to tell the story that we were trying to get at. As you go forward and you make your own Tableau dashboards, I would just ask you to remember our 3-step framework, which is first, what question are you trying to answer? And literally title your chart with that question so your business execs know exactly what they should be able to answer when looking at the visualization. 2, think outside the box. We used slope graphs and diverging stacked bar charts, which is slightly different than what maybe we're used to. And the most important thing I think that we did was we blew up that funnel, like I said, and we used a combination of other charts to tell the story. So just think outside the box a little bit. And lastly, make sure it tells a story. Use the colors and use your space in your dashboard to make sure it just tells a story. So your execs come, they read the question, they can see what's happening right in that data, and it's telling them that story so they don't have to work very hard to try to figure out what your data is saying. So now I believe you are armed and ready to enter into battle to conquer all of your analytics beasts. So thank you very much for coming today.